Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Engineer. And in today's episode, we talk with Billy Phillips from the Hang and Hunt Podcast and the Hunt Urban YouTube channel. We discuss falconry, hunting Sika deer in the marshes of Maryland, and the antics that go on while you're hunting the suburbs of our nation's capital. So we just teased it. We have Mr. Billy Phillips in here with the Hang and Hunt Podcast. Sir, how the heck are you doing today?
Awesome, guys. I appreciate you having me on today.
You're welcome. And then obviously the man behind the switch is Mr. Ben Johnson, sir.
Yo, what's up?
So we kind of teased it obviously in the intro, but today we're going to talk to Billy about all things. He has quite the collection of, not collection, but quite the hobbies, if you will. So Billy, we'll get into, obviously right off the bat, one of the things I think we're most interested in, let's briefly talk some about your falconry and kind of how that got, actually before we get started, let's introduce yourself. Introduce yourself and kind of the Hang and Hunt Podcast and what all you guys are doing over there in D.C. area.
Yeah. Again, my name is Billy Phillips. I avid outdoorsman, a falconer, bow hunter, half of the Hang and Hunt podcast, where we talk about all the urban hunting and miscellaneous hunting and debauchery that we're involved in. My second half is Taylor Chamberlain. You guys probably know him as the urban hunter, the urban bowman, we both got into urban hunting and saddle hunting back in the early mid 2000s, and just been crushing it ever since. We kill a lot of deer in the suburban areas of DC, and on top of it, I'm a falconer, like I mentioned, and that's a real passion that I have, and I have to squeeze that in between multiple jobs, podcasts, the Hunt Urban brand, helping out with Tethered and everything else in the family, and it's just, I'm a pretty busy guy.
Sure. And so Ben and I are both saddle hunters as well, and I think you guys have a large part to play in that. I think, honestly, we can get into it a little bit more later, but the First Light video that they did on Tailored, I think probably really revolutionized the world for tethered and the world for saddle hunting, period, because that was our first experience really with it. But like I said, we'll get into that right now in a little bit later. But we have to get into the falconry, man. This is some really cool stuff. We've been following your Instagram, obviously, for a long time. And you're here more recently, obviously, is your season. So we've been posting a lot more about that. But let's talk to the listeners a little bit about what falconry is and kind of how you got started with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So falconry is hunting with a trained raptor, and the hunting piece is kind of critical to that definition. You have to actually hunt with them to be a falconer, right? If you just keep a bird, then you're a pet keeper, so there is definitely a difference there. So falconry is a highly regulated, federally regulated sport, where you'll take a raptor, typically from the wild, and you will train it. You're not training it to hunt, but you are teaching it that you're not going to kill it, you're not going to eat it, and that you're beneficial to the raptor's life. So just briefly on the training process, you trap this wild hawk, you bring it into your home, you bring it in, you give it a thorough health check, you make sure it's not diseased or injured or anything else, and the whole time its hackles are up, its wings are wide, and it's thinking you're trying to eat it. So you try not to make too much eye contact with it. You try to get it to eat. You try to, you really want to keep it calm, and you teach it that you're not going to kill it and it can trust you. Once it builds that trust, it'll start eating from your fist. Then it'll start hopping and flying to you. And once you can get it to do that, you can start to gradually take it outside. So it starts to follow you outside from tree to tree. And then you start flushing game under it. And once you can flush game under it, it'll attack like immediately. It's like hardwired in. They can't help it. If they see a squirrel or a rabbit, they go after it. And then it realizes pretty quickly, like in a 4 to 6 week time frame, from the time you trap it to the time you're hunting, 4 to 6 weeks, it realizes that you are actually beneficial to them when they go out for a hunt.
That's very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, falconry is it's intriguing, and it's wild, and it's crazy to think that you can take a wild animal and
trust you,
train it.
Yeah.
And to get it to trust you, and it's a partnership that you have, not a companionship. You're not friends. It doesn't like you. It's not going to cuddle with you. It won't like if you try to hug it or anything like that. It's wild, without a doubt. And if you do the wrong thing, spook it, startle it, it will hit you with its talons like a rattlesnake. I mean, they're super fast. So, but it does understand that, hey, this person's not going to kill me, but it also feeds me and it helps me find game. I mean, it's wild. If you ever get a chance, you ever come down, you're ever able to hunt with me, I'd love to take you out. Or I'm sure there's local falconers around who would take you out as well. It's a blast.
Oh yeah, I mean, falconry, some adult beverages. I'm down for that. I already told you my brother lives on the East Coast, so we're bound for a visit here before too long.
Well, come on out. You're welcome.
Let's say a guy like me, I don't know anything about it, we want to get into falconry. How would someone go about doing that?
The very first thing you want to do is to look up the regulations at the state level. The next thing you would want to do is just start doing the research and understanding the time commitment that it involves. The next step would be to find some local falconers and go hunting with them and see if it's something that not just interests you, but something that you actually want to commit to, because it is a major commitment. It's not like a shotgun that you can just put in a cabinet for a week or 2 weeks and pull it out and it's ready to shoot again. A raptor is an animal that you need to work with and spend 1 to 2 hours every single day with it. So that after that step of finding some people to hunt with, and let's say you do commit to doing it and you decide that's something for you, then you need to find someone who will sponsor you. And that person is going to have to teach you falconry, or not even necessarily teach you falconry, but guide you through the process for 2 years. It's a 2-year commitment that they have to make to you. And a lot of times they're complete strangers. And it's very difficult to find a complete stranger to mentor you through a process for 2 full years. And on top of it, there's a risk involved with that, because if you just take Joe Blow off the street as your apprentice falconer and they murder a bird or they do something that can hurt the sport of falconry, that not only can put you in jeopardy and your license in jeopardy, but it could put the sport of falconry as a whole in jeopardy. And just think about the pressures that trappers, for example, have, especially now. Hound hunters are having all of these regulations coming across, and there's states that are banning hunting with dogs. So imagine the pressures that the falconry community has, because it's the only sport where you can take a wild animal out of the wild, permitted, and go and hunt with it. It's the only one in the world. You can't do it with any other animal in any other way. So it's highly regulated. So it's really important to find a good sponsor, and that sponsor to accept a good candidate for it, because we want someone who's going to represent falconry in a positive way. So those are the steps, and I simplified it, but the most difficult part is finding a good sponsor.
Well, I could see where the sponsor would be coming from too, because you have to put your faith in someone that you don't even know, that they're going to be responsible and take care of the bird and do all that stuff that you're asking them to do. And it would be nerve-wracking to be like a sponsor to a complete stranger, and you don't know. I'm sure you hope that they're going to do a good job, and 2 years is a long time to commit to somebody you don't know.
And, at the end of that 2 years, if that sponsor doesn't feel as though that apprentice is going to hack it, I mean, it's going to be a hard conversation to have with someone who says, you spent 2 years doing this, but I'm not going to sign off on you because I don't think you're going to be a good falconer. That's tough to do. And people have tough times breaking up with girlfriends and things like that, or firing someone from a job. And you have someone who's, maybe totally committed to falconry, but you'd say, hey, you're not, I'm crushing your dream because I don't think you're going to be a good falconer. That's tough to do. that's a challenge, but then also, I haven't had an apprentice yet. I know I will eventually. And that's going to be a conversation that a sponsor has to have right up front. Says, look, there's a good possibility that you don't make it through.
Oh, yeah.
And falconry is one of those things. It's one of those activities. It's a commitment that once the person makes it, they're going to do it themselves or they're not going to do it. It's kind of like, oh, I'm going to quit smoking. No, you're not. Unless you actually commit to doing it, you're not going to quit. And, I'm going to get in shape. No, you're not. You say you are. Let's see you actually do it. It's the action. It's not the words. So that's falconry, and that's how you kind of get into it. And it's a challenge, but it's good that it's a challenge. I think the actual art of it, because there is more of an art than a science to falconry, I think that part is personal, and that's the easiest part of it. It's the commitment and finding that sponsor and learning it, the journey, going through that journey, that's the challenge, that's the difficulty.
And then, we had kind of talked about this offline a little bit too, but, obviously you're capturing these juvenile birds. I think you said, around 6 months time frame. Like how does that process, like how does the capturing process work? And that was something that we didn't discuss earlier.
Yeah, sure. So I trap red-tailed hawks because red-tailed hawks are very prevalent. They're just about on every telephone pole going up and down a highway. So you see them everywhere. There's a high population of them. They're also the best hawk for me in the game that I have surrounding me. I can go in my backyard and go hunt rabbits and squirrels any day. So I choose to trap a red-tailed hawk in the fall. We're federally regulated in that we can only trap juveniles, so we're not taking an adult out of the breeding population. So we'll trap a juvenile bird, and there are different ways to trap. And a lot of falconers don't like to really talk about the trapping process because we don't want to give people ideas to go out and just trap their own bird, because you have to have a federal license and a permit to do so. But I can briefly kind of touch on how you trap them. There's two different ways that I trap them. One, and the most fun, is to go up on the ridge on top of the mountains. I live right next to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we find areas that are open, that are wide open, that you can see for miles, especially in a northwestern direction. And we set up an apparatus where we have pigeons that they have these leather harnesses over their body. So you can actually attach them to like a string and have them flap. And I mean, they're live pigeons, right? But then when a hawk comes down and attacks them, the talons will hit that leather. Okay, so it doesn't kill the pigeon. Sometimes a pigeon won't make it, but most of the time it protects the pigeon. And then you actually pull that string over to a large bow net and release the trigger, and it traps both the hawk and the pigeon at the same time.
That's wild.
It's really exciting. I mean, we've had golden eagles come down and try to kill our pigeons, and we have to run out of the blind and scare them off, because I don't want to catch a golden eagle, We've had Cooper's hawks, Merlins, peregrine falcons, you name the raptor that would eat a pigeon, especially a pigeon that looks like it's in distress, and they come down and we catch them and check them and release them, But so that's one way that we do it. Another way, and the more common way that people trap falconry birds, is to road trap, where they'll actually have a trap that they'll put a live gerbil or sparrows or mouse or rat inside this hardware cloth trap, and it has monofilament or wire nooses all over it. So you'll drive down the road and kind of sneakily drop this trap out of your vehicle, and then you continue driving up, 100 yards or so, and sit and wait. And that raptor will be, redtail for example, will be up on a telephone pole or on a tree. It'll see that free meal and go down and try to catch it, but it gets caught in the nooses. So then you've got to go over and secure the bird, and it's not happy at all at this point,
No, yeah.
So you have to go and secure it and give it a health check, untangle it from the nooses, and secure it so then you can take it home. Then you go through a process of vet checks. You check for worms. They always have like feather lice, and they always have these insects called flat flies that they're like a blood-sucking fly. And I've got a funny story about those. This past year, I caught my hawk. I brought it home, and I'm inside the house, and I'm putting equipment on it. It's leather anklets and jesses, so I can secure the bird. And there's flat flies all over it, and they're like crawling, and they're like disgusting. They kind of look like a cross between a spider and a housefly. Okay, they're nasty. I mean, they're just blood-sucking little critters, right? Well, a couple of them got off the hawk, and before I had a chance to actually spray it down with a chemical that actually gets rid of the pests. Well, my wife came home, and we're looking at the hawk and everything, and then yeah, and then there was a flat fly that landed. It flew and landed in my one daughter's hair.
Oh.
So my wife's like freaking out. She's like, "Oh, there's a bug!" And she swats it, and it flies over and lands on the sliding glass door. And she's like, "Ooh, what is that thing?" And they're like freaking out, and I'm like keeping my mouth closed, right? I'm like, "Oh shit, she's gonna say, get that hawk out of the house, And she's like, "What is it?" So they start to take pictures of it, and they can't figure out what it is. And we go and I kill it, and I get it out of the house, and I get the hawk out too. I come back in the house, and my daughter says, "Dad, Google image search. That's a flat fly, and it came off your hawk." My wife hit the roof, man.
Oh, dude.
She was she freaked out. She's like, "That thing can never come in the house again. What are you doing? It's blood sucking. It's going to give my kids diseases." I mean, she really freaked out, but it wasn't. They're harmless. They're not, they can't do anything. But it was just funny that she, like, a few years ago, that I would have gotten away with it, and they never would have known. But now Google image search on every phone.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Then the old mama bear starts coming out, and that's definitely not anything that you want, for sure.
Yeah, my wife's a redhead too, and she lives up to it.
Shout out Billy's wife for holding it down.
Yeah, right. She is super patient though. I mean, I'm blessed because she is cool with the things that I do and burning the candle at both ends, as long as I'm, doing what I'm supposed to at home, which sometimes that lacks, and I'll admit that. And she would definitely reiterate that I do slip up every now and then, but no, I'm really blessed. She's been awesome throughout the whole process of not only bow hunting, but falconry and fishing and podcasts and everything else.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You guys always, you're when you're bow hunting 200 some days a year and doing all the other things that you want to do, you guys always have, like you said, candle at both ends. And so having that support system obviously probably means the world.
Yeah. And especially with falconry, you have to build a shelter for it. And we call it a mews, MEWS. And it's like an indoor enclosure that has perches for it. And then there's also an outdoor enclosure that you have to have as a weathering area, so the bird actually can be in the elements. So because when it gets rained on or snowed on and gets sunlight, those elements actually benefit the bird's health. Now, if you have a gale or a blizzard, you bring it into that into the mews area to keep it protected, but you have to be able to build one of those or have a space in your house for that. And if your significant other is opposed to that, well, you're gonna have a tough time being a falconer.
Well, man, that I hope that gives everyone a great insight on that. Like I said, if they get a chance, definitely go to your Instagram. We'll put everything down in the show notes. But there's some really sweet pictures of that and the whole process, and obviously some of the hammers that you've had over the years. So one thing that I wanted to get into too, obviously, being in Ohio, we don't really experience them too much. But I want to play a soundbite for you, and I want to get your first impression when you hear this.
Oh man, when I was 8 years old, my grandfather took me on a small family property that we had on the eastern shore of Maryland and took me deer hunting for the first time. He sat me down in the 2x4 tree stand, and it's pitch dark outside, and I hear that noise, and it scared me to death. I thought it was like a banshee. I'm like, Pop, what is it? And he's like, shh, be quiet, be quiet. I'm like, Pop, did you hear that? He's like, yeah, be quiet. That's a stag. Well, that's a Sika deer, a stag. That's a bugle. It's a Sika deer is a miniature elk. So what you just heard was an elk's bugle, and they live wild in certain areas of Maryland, Virginia. I think there's a population. I know there's a population in Texas that have gotten out from different ranches and things. But yeah, that's a Sika deer.
And they've gained. I mean, obviously, we'll get into your guys' tethered hunt, which you just had here just a couple months ago. But I think, honestly, maybe you can speak to this a little bit too. But when Ranella and all those guys from Meat Eater did their episode, did you notice like more of an uptick in people wanting to come out? I mean, I feel like you had to, because to me, I never knew anything about them until obviously I watched that episode of that from the Meat Eater a few years back.
So Jim Shockey did one before Ranella, and there was a definite uptick on the public land hunting down there. Then Jana Waller from Skullbound, she did a hunt and she killed a stag that I think it was like the number 4 in the state, and actually on a buddy of mine's property. There was another uptick there. Then when Ranella came out and the Meat Eater guys did their episodes, it just exploded. And now when you go down to public land, there's some of those areas of public land, they have small parking areas, and you have to get there at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning just to park. And you can't even walk in until 5 in the morning. So you're sitting in your vehicle for 3 hours just waiting until you can actually hunt. And there will be a line, down the road of people trying to get in, hoping someone leaves. If you drive down near the public land, there will be vehicles and kayaks up and down any of the roads on those public lands now. It is crazy. And the other thing that people have found down there is the snakehead fishing is absolutely incredible in those same areas. So in the springtime, you see those same kayaks and people are doing tons of fishing down there. But yeah, huge uptick to the point where we got a ton of backlash from not a lot of individuals, but the individuals who gave us the backlash were very, very vocal about our tethered videos that came out. And there are locals that are down there and they're like, hey, stop promoting this because there's going to be no Sika deer left. Well, the state's not going to allow that to happen. But what their other fear is that so many people are going to start buying tags that it's going to turn into a draw hunt. So then even the locals, and that's a concern, sure. But one thing that does keep people away is that the best time to hunt them is in October, in a swamp, in a marsh, and the mosquitoes down there are just it's absolutely horrible. I take 2 thermocells with me when I hunt, and it's still not enough. It still looks like your back got shot with 9-shot. It's really, really bad. And then you're going through stinky, smelly marsh and hip boots and chest waders, and not if, but when you fall into that mucky, muddy water, you get cold really, really quickly, and it's a disaster. It's a tough hunt. If you walk in a mile, it's going to take you a good hour to get in that distance, because it's very difficult to get in. A lot of people are kayaking in, taking boats with those gator tail like mud motors, but still once you get to the point, then you've got to bust through Phragmite, which is a common reed that's 12 feet tall and as thick as autumn olive, and you've got to get into these spots to hunt. So it's a challenge. It's an adventurous type of a hunt, especially on these big public lands.
Oh, sure. And it's something completely different. I mean, it's definitely not, let me drive my side-by-side to my stand, walk, 100 yards and hop up in it or whatever have you. Or even from the public perspective, walking in, or what you guys are doing, walking in, 40 yards or even less at times, and, climbing up and you're ready to hunt. It's almost like a cross between like an elk trip and almost like duck hunting, if you will, where it's just extra work. I mean, Remind me who from that Taylor trip. I know you guys talked about a little bit. Didn't somebody fall in?
No, tripped and fell. I know my dad fell and got a little face full of mud on that trip. And then I did tackle Jared after he shot that monster stag.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Oh yeah, 'cause so, you were talking about your clothes and
dude. And when I got we're in hunting camp, so we don't have showers yet, and it's a brand new property that we have, so we don't have showers. So I'm still dirty, and I got into my Suburban and got mud on the seat. Oh boy, that wasn't good. That wasn't good.
Again,
just
shout
not
out.
Thinking,
Shout out. No doubt. Yeah, that's wild. And I mean, you guys had a great. I think we watched some of the videos. I think obviously Jared shot a huge buck. That, if I'm not mistaken, I think the video was solid. He was like close to state record.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be about. My guess is about 4 or 5 inches short of the state record, but I mean, even saying that, it's still a gigantic stag. And after he shot it, he's like, "So how big do they get?" And I was like, "That big, as big as the one that you shot. That's how big they get. I mean, that's the pinnacle of a stag over there." Now, on some of these ranches and these high fence hunts, they'll get bigger, and they also have a different subspecies of Sika that gets much, much larger. But the population that we hunt they don't have much or any real genetic diversity. They started with, I think it was less than 24 animals back in the 19 teens, and they've exploded into, I don't know, probably 50 or 60,000 animals, I think is what I heard. Don't quote me on that, but it's so the genetic diversity is not there. So I guess some of their antlers are going to be smaller than, say, something you'd find on a high fenced hunt or something like that. But these are wild animals.
Yeah, that like I said, and I'm familiar with that whole Aberdeen, Ocean City, southeastern shore, Maryland area. And so that's definitely something that's going to be on my list. Even before talking to you guys, I mean, I think that Meat Eater episode really brought some curiosity for me. It's like, how do I visit my family and do something cool at the same time? Like, sorry, brother, we can only visit you in October. We'll have to come and check this out. So
it's a great hunt, and the experience is awesome, right? It's a different animal, and that's great. But when you taste Sika venison, it's out of this world. It is, in my opinion, the best venison. It's better than moose. It's better than elk. I think it's better than Axis also. And people say that Axis is the most delicious. And I've had all of them, and it is fantastic. In fact, the first time my wife and other people had Sika deer, I cooked whitetail and Sika at the same exact time. Same seasonings, same temperatures and everything, and everyone chooses the Sika over the whitetail every time.
That's awesome. Yeah,
it's fantastic. It's really, I'm not trying to sell it anymore because it's just going to have more people that want to come hunt. But they're very special. They're very special to our family. My first deer, all of my brother's first deer, my father's first deer, all of us and my cousins, all their first deer were Sika deer. I shot 3 Sika deer before I ever shot a whitetail.
Yeah, that's cool. And then you guys have the family farm down there too, where you're going as well, correct?
Yes. In fact, we just got the place just a little over a year ago. So this past season was our first real season that we had. In fact, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are the last 3 days that you have an opportunity to hunt in Maryland for deer. And they have a primitive season, so it's sidelock muzzleloaders or traditional bows. So on Thursday will be my last opportunity for the year, and I'm targeting a stag that we call Samurai. He's only a 4-point, and one side is kind of short, but the other side is it's like a 20-inch spike on that side. He's just a giant. He looks like a 55-gallon drum with legs. He's huge. He's just a monster. Mm-hmm. So we're targeting him. There's a couple other big stags that we're targeting, but this late in the year, one of those stags could come in and not have antlers. So it's like, but we get to get out and still get to hunt that last time for the year and before turkey season. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about that.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads me into my next point. Obviously, you talked about your flintlock, your side lock, and then leading in the turkey. I know I hadn't heard you had one built for you, correct?
I did. Ed Winger, it was the builder. VA Flintlocks, like Virginia Flintlocks, built one, and I got so lucky because he builds a few a year, and he's booked and backed up for a long, long time. And I was lucky enough to be able to slide into his schedule, and he built me a 36 caliber Lehigh Valley style flintlock, and it's gorgeous, and it's my favorite weapon that I have because just the accuracy, the beauty of it, and I've always wanted a flintlock. When he was going through the process of building, or really when I commissioned him, I told him what my budget was, and he said, well, it might be better with that budget if you just get a kit rifle and build it yourself. And I said, well, where can I, how much farther do I have to go? And well, we added a third to my budget, and then added another third to my budget, and but the idea was, well, it's going to take him, 6 months before he even starts building it. So I've got that time to build it up and and justify it. But so he starts building it, and he says, yeah, I'll be able to do a little bit of in-size carving and some things, and so he starts building it. He starts to carve it, and he does this one carving, and I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. I can't believe I'm getting that level of carving and that much engraving and carving into what I paid. And then he's like, I'm going to start on the rest of the carving next week. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's doing even more, so I mean, and when I went to look at the rifle, I was just in awe. I didn't even want to touch it. And he's like, come on, let's go, let's shoot it. And I loaded, and this is the very first time I'd ever shot this rifle. The very first time. It hadn't been sighted in at all. He had put a laser on to line up the front and the rear sight, but I mean, it's a laser at 40-inch distance, So he had a steel target at 45 yards. It was a 6-inch steel plate, and he said, well, let's see if we can hit it from here. My very first shot, I center punched it, and it wasn't me because it was on a bench, so it was definitely the rifle, and I was blown away. I mean, now this rifle, I had it built specifically in 36 caliber because I want to squirrel hunt with it. Well, right after I had it built, we were going on an Osceola turkey hunt in Florida, and I looked at the regs, and I was able to use that on private land down there. So I took it down and shot an Osceola with it, and actually ended up killing about 100-pound hog with it also. I was a little worried. I'm like, maybe I should take a rifle or a bow to kill a hog. And they were like, after the people we were with saw what it did to the turkey, they were like, I think it can take a smaller hog. I mean, not a 250-pound boar or something like that. I wouldn't take that chance, but a 100-pound hog. And I got a clean pass through all the way on that hog with that 36 caliber. Only 40 grains of powder too, so it did the job. But it's a special, definitely a special piece that I have. That it's like a display, but I also use it. And people have asked, like, why are you taking that thing hunting? Because I'm one of the people who, when I get something, I want to use it. If I don't use it and it sits in a safe somewhere and I never get to use it, it's like I don't have it.
No, I agree.
And it's like with gear. There's gear that I've had over the years that I stopped using. I get rid of it. I give it away or trash it because I feel like I don't even have it if I don't use it.
No, that's awesome. Do you have any plans to I mean, obviously you shot it with private land there, and both of those pictures are on your Instagram too. I definitely recommend listeners go check those out because that was a nice size hog. I mean, it was a nice size hog for sure. So, and of course the bird is beautiful. But that rifle is it's a work of art. It really is. I mean,
It is.
it would be hard. I mean, it really would be hard to take it out. It looks like something that belongs in the museum, but you just have to know. I mean, it was built with a purpose, and you know, the best way that you can, I guess, honor it would be to use it. You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I actually did not take it squirrel hunting this year, which I'm blown away that I didn't. But we talked about burning the candle at both ends. I just, you know, I didn't make time for it is really what it boils down to. But I knew I'm going to use it for turkey hunting, because in Virginia you can use a rifle for turkey hunting as well. So I'll use it this spring. Yeah. And you know, people say, oh, you shouldn't use a rifle in the spring for turkeys because the idea is to call them in close. Well, yeah, I'm still calling them in close. I'm not shooting them at 100 yards. You know, I'm still going to shoot them in that shotgun or bow range anyway. So, but I'm just worried that it's going to be a little too shiny.
Well, that could be. Yeah, brush it in.
So on that turkey hunt though, I hadn't even loaded the gun yet when the gobblers started coming in. So I don't think they had an opportunity to see it. So, but I just need to be in the shadows, I guess. And because I'm definitely not putting like camo tape or anything like that on it.
Maybe you could get I've seen people put like socks or something over things too. I mean, obviously it's a really long rifle, but I've seen people do that. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's a work of art for sure.
And you know, and if I put a sock on it too, it'll take away from the look of when I'm even hunting. So I'm almost thinking I'd rather a bird bust me because it saw the gun, and it limits me. I get it. And it's like shooting traditional archery. You're limiting yourself without a doubt. My brother Josh, he almost strictly hunts with a longbow. We go out elk hunting this year. If he had a compound bow, he would have killed an elk this year, but he had his longbow and only was able to get to half draw, couldn't get to full draw before the elk busted him. But with a compound, he could have already been at full draw and drilled it. So I'm limiting myself, and I do realize that, but I accept that. I mean, I know I can kill a turkey with a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Well, it's the nostalgia of the thing too. Like you're doing it the way that people have done it in the past, and I mean, clearly you're into it. Obviously, with the falconry, I mean, you seem like you're more into the traditional style of hunting, and so why? Yeah, exactly. If you're limiting yourself, so be it. At least you know that you've done it.
Absolutely, and I'm definitely not the type of person who is a purist in any way. You know, for fishing, for example, I'm a fly fisherman, but I have no problem going out and trolling for rockfish or stripers on the Chesapeake Bay with big trolling rods and you know 3-pound weights, and just you're winching them in at that point. I have no problems rifle hunting for deer. I'm not a purist in any way. I want to enjoy whatever it is in the outdoors and enjoy it the way that other people do, because the outdoors are more of a social thing than anything else. And with social media and these podcasts, for example, you know, we're branching out socially in a digital format, but we're still doing the same thing that, you know, our generations before us did at hunting camp once a year. Now we're just doing it year round.
All right, everyone. We hope you're enjoying the conversation so far, but we need to take a quick break to mention that we will be at the Open Season Sportsman's Expo, formerly known as the Ohio Deer and Turkey Expo, this weekend. The show runs Friday, March 18th to Sunday, the 22nd. And not only will we be able to meet our pro staff, but we will be also having special expo pricing, giveaways, and much, much more. For more information, visit vanceoutdoors.com. That's Vance, VANCE, outdoors.com. Now let's get back into the conversation. Well, that gets us into the next thing, man. Let's get into the Burbs. It was kind of funny. We chuckled at ourselves. Obviously, we helicopters and stuff on the podcast, so that's just another thing about the Burbs. But let's get into just a little bit what it is like hunting in the Burbs, and then obviously I know you guys come out to Ohio from time to time. Maybe we can touch on the differences of hunting in quote unquote a real environment as well as your typical environment, and then the difference between that and hunting in someone's backyard.
Hunting in someone's backyard is still hunting. we're culling deer in people's backyards. Like, let's make no mistake, we're going in and we actually have, I guess you could call them clients, that they want the deer removed. So we go in and we cull deer. So we're using hunting techniques to cull deer. I do usually only walk. I can see my truck most of the time from my perch in a tree. You're hunting over swing sets and playgrounds sometimes, within sight of multiple homes. You can see into homes at times. There have been multiple times where I've had landowners ask, "Why didn't you shoot that deer? It walked right under you," and they don't understand the concept of bow hunting and the proper, shot placement and shot selection and things like that. So you have to be very, I guess, selective on those shots, because, when you double lung a deer, how far do they run? 100 yards, on average. They're not going to usually make it too much farther than 100 yards if you double lung them. Obviously, there's exceptions to anything. But if you're in a half-acre yard and it runs 100 yards, it's going 3 properties away. So if you don't have permission on that third property, you've got to knock on doors. And if it gets out of sight after the first yard, you may have to knock on 3 or 4 doors just to blood trail through and locate a deer that was double lunged and it's hit and it's down within 10 seconds. So that's a challenge, is just orchestrating how you're going to retrieve a deer after you shoot it. That's something that is a big challenge. The Seek One guys, like Lee and Drew, they're good buddies of ours, and Kendall. They're great dudes. They have a different mindset of hunting. They're going after and specifically targeting big bucks on these similarly sized urban and suburban properties. They have to do the same thing, but the issue that I have is that when I go find a property that has tons of deer on it, and I know there's a big buck in the area, let's say a big buck has let's just say a 1 mile square range, if I've got a property that's a half an acre and that buck never comes on that property, but, once at night, during the season, I'm probably never going to kill that buck. So I have to go I might have to get 10, 20, 30 permissions to really narrow it down. And I have only so much time to dedicate to it. And on top of it, I'll shoot a big buck all day. I love big bucks. And when the rut comes, I focus on bigger deer. But having said that, I really just like shooting deer. I love bow hunting for deer. It's one of my favorite things in the world. So if a deer comes in that gets me excited, or if it's a doe that blows at me, it's going to die. It's game over. Like, I'm coming back and I'm coming after you. If I don't get you, I'm going to get you. But I think the big challenge is trying to maneuver on a specific deer when you only have a half acre is a challenge, whereas opposed to like on the Ohio lease that we've hunted on, if we find a big deer, well, we've got the whole lease that we can go hunt. I've got 300 acres that I can go find the perfect setup to go hunt that deer. So I think that's a big difference. Pinch points are more readily available in HOAs and suburbs, because these houses back up to, a lot of times there's floodplains or creek bottoms, and you have backyards that are 40 yards apart. Well, then you've got a 40-yard funnel that those deer are going to travel. So that's something that's really cool. There have been many, many times where I come home. I used to be a teacher, and I would have my teaching clothes on and just throw a leafy suit over top of it and climb up the tree in, my loafers. And I've hunted. In fact, if you Outdoor Life did a photo essay on Taylor and I, not this past October, but the October before. And if you look at the pictures, I'm wearing Sperry's and climbing up the
I'll
tree.
have to look. I didn't notice it. I know what you're talking about. I didn't notice it. I'll have to go check that out.
My brother-in-law was like, "Nice hunting boots, jerk." So, I mean, we do have to battle like landscapers and things like that, that sometimes they push deer to us, but sometimes they blow deer away from us. Kids walking through, trying to steal trail cameras. It's the things you see in the burbs are definitely a juxtaposition as to what you see in rural America,
sure.
without a doubt.
For sure. And, you know, it was actually funny. I know Taylor had Mark Kenyon down this past fall to try his hand at it too. And of course, I mean, I don't think there's a whitetail thing that he doesn't know. And even he, you know, at times struggled to get it. And it was just cool to watch them. I mean, if people go watch, I think it was an episode, I believe, on YouTube. But him going, or no, they were talking about it on his podcast, and he had Justin talking about how they were, you know, recording him having the conversations, trying to get that permission. And I mean, you're intimidating. You're a guy where people don't want to be talked to, or you know, they want to know why you're even bothering them at the time of day. I mean, you shoot a deer at the end of, you know, last light. Well, now you're knocking on their door at, you know, 7:30 or whatever when it's dark. You know, who the heck are you and why are you here and what do you want? I mean, that could be extremely intimidating.
Especially when they're maybe anti-hunters or they're anti-weapons of any sort, and you say that you shot an animal next door to their house, and they're like, whoa. Because most of the people, we try to stay as low-key as possible because we don't want the attention, especially when we're out hunting. And so people don't even know we're there a lot of the times, or in the neighborhood. Now they know when we're like, if we're hunting a property, the property owners know that we're there, and we stay in constant contact with them. But their neighbor 2 houses down may not. And in fact, Mark actually had the cops called.
Yeah, I remember. During
that.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that on his podcast episode. Yeah, that's why. That's why. Well, of course, do we want to get into the situation that you had with the super trooper, super trooper, or whatever? What would you like to?
That was the snozberries taste like snozberries, right? No, so Taylor and I are hunting, and this was like the weekend before. Like this was on like a Monday, so on like Sunday, the COVID lockdown began. It was like, you have to quarantine in your home. Everyone was at their home. The only thing you were allowed to do was recreational activities. Well, hunting being a recreational activity, we said, screw it, let's go out and hunt. So we get to our spot, and we were only about 75 yards apart. And this was in like April. I think it was April. And I can't remember. I think if it was April, it was the very, very end of our season because it runs through the last Saturday in April. So we're out hunting, and Taylor sends me a text. He's like, hey, someone just parked behind our trucks. And I look, and I can see a vehicle, and it was just getting light. And I could see lights, and then I see my truck. Like when you open the door on my truck, the lights flash. And I see the lights flash. I'm like, whoever that was just went into my truck. So I'm like, all right, I got to get down. So I got down real fast, and I'm at the base of the tree, and I'm putting my sticks together, and I hear someone walking, and I look up, and there's a police officer with his M4 pointed at me, and he's coming to me. And he's like, you know, at first he was kind of calm, but he was excited. But I mean, it's leveled at me right in my face, and he's coming to me like at 30, 40 yards and just walking in. And he's like, you know, what do you have? Whatever you have in your hand, drop it. Drop what's in your hand. Where's your partner? Where's your partner? And I'm like, whoa, I'm starting to freak, right? Taylor's got his cell phone camera out, and the dum-dum had his big camcorder on the tree right there. He could have been filming with his big camera and wasn't. I'm like, oh. So the guy's yelling, where's your partner? Where's your partner? I'm like, he's over there. And then Taylor cuts the video off. Well, then he comes over to me, and he starts to get agitated because he sees, and I was actually hunting with a crossbow that morning, and he sees the crossbow. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, we're hunting. This isn't hunting season. And then he starts to get agitated. Then he starts screaming at Taylor, you need to come over here right now and show yourself. And he still got the gun on me the whole time, like 10 yards away, pointed at my face. I'm like, this guy's going to shoot me, right? So Taylor's like, I'm coming. He's like, you're not coming fast enough. And then he's starting to get upset. And Taylor's like, sir, I'm in a tree right now. He's like, stop arguing with me. And and like Taylor's like getting a little irritated because he can't see that this guy's still got a gun on me, right? He's like searches me very thoroughly. Has me down on my knees, hands behind my head, gun to the back of my head, like holding me there. Gets Taylor over, same thing with him. We're like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, this guy, we're getting busted for, being outside of our homes during a quarantine. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're in a police state right now. I'm freaking. And then he's like, yeah, we got you guys on thermals here with a drone and saying that, that there have been burglaries in the area. Are you guys coming to stake out properties? He's like yelling at us, and I'm like, look, we're hunting here. We have permission. We show him all of our paperwork. We show him our hunting licenses, the written permission that we have on the property, and we had to actually show him that hunting season was still in. Once we showed him all that, instantly, like, he kind of stopped talking and was like, we're like, hey, so whoever called the cops on us, can you tell them that we're here legally? He's like, that's when he said, we had you on thermals. We knew you were in here. And then he walks away, doesn't give us his card or anything, just walks away, walks out to the road, goes to his car and leaves. I mean, we're like shaking at this point, freaking out. Well, come to find out, we actually ended up going to the police department, and we didn't file an official complaint. We just talked to his supervisor and said, look, this is what happened, and it was a problem. Like, this shouldn't happen, right? Usually when we get police called on us fairly regularly in the Burbs hunting. People may see us or see a vehicle parked and they're not used to seeing it. And the police usually come up and they come to the edge of the woods and they call to us and say, come on out. And we go and show them everything, and they say, all right, you guys are legal, you're good to go. Sorry I ruined your hunt. And that's how it ends. But this, I guess apparently when COVID hit, there were almost no police officers available. A lot of them were quitting. So they were taking people that were in the office and throwing them out doing patrols. Well, this guy was like, whoa. It was like Rod Farva, and he's like, I'm out. Well, now I can actually do something. I want a damn liter cola, It's like he's freaking out on us. And so we talked to the supervisor, and the supervisor's like, look, and we showed him the video and everything. He's like, yeah, that really shouldn't have happened. He definitely shouldn't have gone into our vehicles. He came onto private property. There was no reason. There's nothing suspicious about what we were doing that should have, prompted him to come onto the property. So it really ended at that. And then about, I don't know, a month and a half later, all the George Floyd stuff happened. And all the riots, and everyone was hating police officers. So Taylor and I have talked about this many times, like off air. It's like, imagine if that would have happened while we were in the middle of our summer hunting season, because we do damage and kill permits during the summertime. Imagine if that would have happened while the riots were going on, and we posted that. It would have been, we probably would have been on CNN or something, it would have been, oh, see, now look what the police officers are doing. And that would have been even worse. And we're big fans of law enforcement. We have friends that are in law enforcement, and I have my contracts in D.C. are all government contracts. So I'm interacting with law enforcement at federal level and local levels on a daily basis. Like, I'm friends with folks like that. So I'm so glad it didn't happen, at that time. But that was wild, but that's part of hunting in the suburbs. We talked about on the Sika deer hunt, the mosquitoes. Well, in the suburbs, you have to deal with the people, whether it's kids. A buddy of mine shot a deer, and right after he shot it, some kids walked through the woods, and he stayed in the tree quietly. And usually, when people come through the woods, they don't look up, so they never see you, and they just walk right under you and they keep going. But these kids came and saw his arrow was sticking in the ground, and they grabbed it and picked it up and then dropped it and saw they had blood on their hands. And they took off running, went back to their house. Before he got out of the tree, he heard sirens and the cops came. So that was an explanation that had to happen. That was a bad one. But we've had many run-ins like that they all end well, but you just wonder sometimes, that we definitely have people screaming at us, ruining our hunts, starting up weed whackers and, just revving them next to us while we're hunting so deer won't come in, and that we just get down, and we don't, we don't argue with them. We just get down and leave, and try to be a little more inconspicuous next time.
So, this is one thing I don't think has ever really been talked about, but like, obviously you two are polarizing in terms of this process. But like in your area, like, is this a common practice, or are you guys kind of out on a limb? I know you have mentioned sometimes like having friends that do it or whatever, but like realistically, how many people do you think are actively trying this style of hunting?
It's more and more now. I would say in the early 90s, there was virtually no one. Mid-90s, there were a few. Like, I'm talking about like 5 or 6. Now, I don't know. I mean, I get people reach out to us all the time and say, hey, do you want to come hunt with us? We're like, yeah, I mean, sure. And they're like, well, my property that I have permission with is right next to your permission. And we're like, how the heck do you know where we hunt? People are very, very resourceful. They've messaged us and sent us pins saying, is this your set of sticks in this woods on a private property that we're the only people who have permission there? And they know where we hunt. So it's wild that people have really started to do it more and more. And I don't know how many, I have no idea, but it's become nationwide, where people are doing in all these different metropolitan areas. If any of the listeners are considering doing it, what I would recommend is to, one, try to find a buffer. If you've got a property and it's a small property, try to at least get permission to track and retrieve game on your neighbors if you can't also hunt those properties. And the second one is limit your shots to 20 yards and in. And people think, oh, I can shoot to 30 and 40. And yeah, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you absolutely can. But if you can limit your shots to 20 yards and under, you will have a recovery rate that's through the roof. And Taylor and I record, and we keep track of every deer that we shoot. We keep logs, and we know what distances they are, how far they ran, and where we shot them. We kind of do like a mini, not autopsy, but mini, CSI on each animal, so we know how to improve each time. And for the hundreds of deer that we've killed, tomorrow I could shoot a deer that just, steps slightly in quarters, so I get a quartering 2 shot that I didn't really expect. And then after I find that deer, whoa, it was quartering 2, and I didn't even know that it was. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I've killed many, 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 many deer, and I'm still slightly surprised sometimes. So keeping it 20 yards and in, you're going to recover almost every deer. Everyone's lost a deer bow hunting, but if you lose a deer in a suburban area when you're bow hunting, that can ruin it, and it can ruin bow hunting in that area. It could even ruin bow hunting in a state or on a nationwide level. You just do not want to have a negative, anything negative that comes back to bow hunting. So get a buffer, keep your shots in close, and only go for the slam dunk shot. I've passed on bucks that are in the 150 range because they were 30 yards and slightly quartering to me. Where if I was on a big property, I'd put it on the point of the shoulder and smoke him. But I know that deer is going to be back. I know I'm going to have it. Well, I never got an opportunity on that one and never did again. But I'd rather that happen than ruin my chances of hunting in these areas. I would keep that. And I went to Africa for the very first time I went to Africa was back in 2009 or 10, I think. And I'm with a PH, and we're in a blind over a water hole, and this monster black wildebeest came in. And my PH is like, you have to shoot that. That is like a world-class gold medal, whatever, black wildebeest. He's like, it's a giant. We've been trying to kill this black wildebeest for years. We don't see him very often. He's here. You got to kill him. And he was at 45 yards. And I was like, nah, I'm not comfortable with that shot. And I mean, and I shoot, and I shoot very long distances when I practice, but I had ingrained that, yardage into my mind so much that it's too far to risk. Well, out there, we're talking about 50,000 acres. So if I did shoot it and it wasn't like the best shot in the world, they've got world class trackers and they have blood trailing dogs. You're going to find the animal, but it was more of a.
Oh, it looks like we lost him. Let's go ahead and maybe his phone died or something. We'll go ahead and try to give him a call back. He was going through that cool story with the Africa trip. So let's go ahead and see if we can get him a call back.
All right. You got me now?
Yeah, no, you're great. You're great.
Okay, cool. All right. We're good.
What's a podcast without a few challenges, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, not hitting record, hanging up, like all kinds of stuff.
I mean, that's the beauty of a podcast, man. It's just raw. And so, no, it
is. And
go ahead.
Whatever.
You were on your wildebeest. So you said what? 45 yards shot. Obviously, 50 some thousand acres. And you just, I guess, connecting that with, the discipline that it takes to hunt the burbs.
Yeah. So I had ingrained in my mind, you can only take a slam dunk shot, which that's never a bad thing. Passing on animals is never a bad thing if you're not 100% sure it's going to be a slam dunk shot. And I wasn't really comfortable taking that long shot. I had never shot an animal at that distance with a bow. So I totally passed, and I had every opportunity to do it. And I mean, they have world-class trackers. They have blood trailing dogs. You got 50,000 acres. You're going to find the animal, but I didn't do it. And the PH just sat back, just disgusted. Like, are you kidding, man? Come on. I mean, we've been wanting to shoot this thing and he was like, I've got a rifle. He's like, shoot it with my rifle. I'm like, no, I'm bow hunting here. Like, I don't have a problem shooting animals with a rifle, but I was bow hunting, he definitely looked at me like, you're such a loser.
That's awesome.
But I think that story of passing on an animal, no matter if it's world-class or not, especially with archery equipment, is something that everyone should take into consideration when they're bow hunting. And when you're in the burbs, it is imperative that you put that deer down as quickly and as humanely as possible. Not only, it's obvious that you want to do that for the animal, just to be respectful for the animal. The other side of it is that you need to do it for the aesthetics of hunting as a whole and what impact you can have when you're in a community that, a couple thousand people live within a quarter of a mile of you.
One thing I guess I wanted to clarify for the listeners as well, you're still, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're still bound by the state regulations in terms of buck versus doe harvesting, right? Like your buck season, like if you're hunting the rut, are you still bound to just that one buck, or is that part of the calling process as well?
It really depends, but most of the time we're actually able to shoot 3 bucks in Virginia, and on your initial tag you get 3 bucks and I think it's 3 does. I don't really remember because every year when I buy my new tags, I just keep buying bonus tags. So in these urban areas, there's no daily bag limit or season bag limit on antlerless deer. So as long as I buy an $18 bonus tag, I get 6 more antlerless tags. And if I fill those up, I buy 6 more. And I can just keep going as many times as I want.
Okay, so it's not like it's just not like a permit that you're granted. You still have to continue to quote unquote pay into that system.
Correct. Now there are some permits that we've been involved with on special occasions. Let's say for an example, like a landfill will call people in to hunt, and then the state will issue these special tags that don't go against your regular season tags. But a lot of times on those, if you shoot a buck, you have to turn the antlers in. There were a few years where during the kill permit season, the numbers of deer were so high, they were actually issuing tags for antlered bucks to be killed in velvet. But again, we had to turn those velvet bucks in. I shot a slammer and had to turn it in, a real slammer in velvet that would have been beautiful on anyone's wall, and I had to turn it in. I almost actually waited and passed on it and just said, all right, October 1's rolling around, I'll be able to shoot it then, but I didn't. Again, it's hard for me to pass deer.
Props to you guys too, because and Ben knows we had kind of addressed it a little bit in some earlier podcast episodes, but this was the first time that, you know, we are privileged, obviously, to hunt hundreds of acres here in Ohio, and this year we actually took the opportunity. You know, a lot of the influence granted to you guys in terms of trying to do a deer management plan or try to find a different way. So I actually tried my hand at 2 cities this year. Now, of course, we're hunting the outsides, you know, the outskirts of city, you know, or city-owned property. It's not like we're going into someone's backyard, but to try to find a different creative approach, you know, to challenge yourself and to have a cool hunt. We hunted strictly, I mean, for 2 weeks here in Ohio, state preserve land, you know, like a park, if you will. And it was doe first, buck second, no exceptions. If you do, obviously, you know, you're bound to fines and other regulatory issues. And so, but a lot of that was credited to you guys and just that style in which you're hunting and trying something different.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys were able to get out and do that. Also, it's just going to help the deer herd in the future, and especially with things like CWD that are prevalent in most areas now, and they're just spreading. The best way to combat those diseases is to harvest deer, and obviously not to take those deer and continue spreading it, but you need to harvest deer. The biological carrying capacity is like 15 or 20 deer per square mile, where in some of these areas you have 100 to 400 deer per square mile. The biological carrying capacity and the cultural carrying capacity are 2 different things. As hunters, we want to have a target-rich environment. We want to have as many deer as we can. And that pressure that hunters put on the state sometimes goes against what the biologists know is best for the herd. And an example is in Iowa. There are areas in Iowa, and Joe Rogan's talked about this when he had Dudley on, about just the infestation of deer they have in Iowa. Well, it's way above what the biological carrying capacity should be, or is, I'm sorry, but higher than the carrying capacity is, and higher than the herd number should be. But the pressure from hunters to keep your harvest numbers down, we want as many deer as we can, because, look, let's face it, hunters that go into Iowa put a lot of taxpayer dollars back to the state and back to these localities, and it just compounds when they're buying fuel and they're going to the Casey's and getting, you know, food, and, you know, just those dollars that hunters are bringing into the state as a whole and into that economy is priceless. And the states have to balance, okay, we're bringing in a lot of money, but we also need to do what's best for the animals, the environment as a whole. It's a challenge.
And those hunters aren't going there to shoot a bunch of does. You know, they're going there to shoot big bucks, and to the detriment, if you will, of the herd. But like you said, you definitely have to balance out the monetary value of those assets, or those hunters coming in, versus, you know, what's best for the species. So.
And you brought up that earn a buck where you have to shoot a doe, and we have the same thing in Virginia, because whenever you see earn a buck, it means we have too many does. We have too many deer. A lot of people will say, "Oh no, you got to whack all the does, get your doe population down." Well, some people are saying that with no biological background and reasoning for it. It's just that they've heard that from years and years of the Outdoor Channel and the Pursuit Channel, of these big ranches managing their deer herd. Oh, we got to knock the does down. We have to kill the does. Well, there's some areas where you don't want to kill does. You may have a low population, so don't kill does. You know, you really want to follow what your state biologists are saying, and they're a great resource to reach out to. We're in contact with our state biologists regularly because they're excellent sources of information, and hunters need to understand that. Go to your state. Don't be afraid to talk to your game wardens and your conservation police officers, or whatever they call them, and your biologists. Talk to your state, because they're going to be the best resource. They're going to come and say, look, you're hunting in your area, but if you drive 15 minutes west, the deer population over there is incredible. Big bucks are being killed over in this area. They're doing that to help us. Technically they're public servants helping us, so we should use those resources.
Yeah, like you said, they're there for us. You definitely go out and utilize them, and just not take, John Smith's word down the road, oh, you got to kill all the does. Well, like you said, there may be an opportunity where that might not be the case. So,
absolutely. A buddy of mine is a trapper, and he had the game warden called on him because he was trapping and he was doing illegally, but the game warden came out and talked to him and made sure that he was within the law, and he was. And the game warden said, if you want to trap, you ought to consider this public lake that's right down the road. And you're allowed to trap there if you get a permit. And usually those permits get locked in by one person, and then they're allowed to keep that permit for years and years as long as they continue to renew it. But it hadn't been renewed in years, and no one had been putting in for the permit. So he went in, put in, and he trapped multiple otters, multiple beavers right off the bat in this place. It was just loaded with opportunities to trap. And having that resource of talking to one of the game wardens gave him an opportunity to trap even more. So they're a great resource, and don't be afraid to ask why. Why are we changing bag limits? Because they have concrete evidence behind their decisions. They can't just make them off of a whim.
Well, sir, that's about all I have for you. Ben, you got anything?
That's it.
Yeah. We've only been talking for 10 minutes now.
I was like, Billy, I forgot to hit record again. Sorry, we got to do that over again.
That's cool, man.
Awesome. Well, brother, where can people find you? Take your 10 seconds and push all your social media platforms.
So my Instagram is where I really have most of my activity on, and that's _William Phillips _. You can also find me on the Hang and Hunt podcast on all podcast platforms. YouTube, check out Tethered's videos. You'll see me there. Check out our Hunt Urban YouTube channel. You can also see me. I have a little cameo on the In City Limits videos that First Light put out about Taylor, and I even lie about him on there. So if you want to hear some of that.
And those are all awesome. Obviously, Ben and I have been following you guys for a while, and I couldn't recommend you and your guys' channels, whether it's Instagram, social, YouTube, whatever have you. I couldn't recommend those enough. So if you are listening, definitely give that a watch or a listen. And sir, it's been great. We had our challenges today with some technical stuff, but this conversation went exactly like I thought, and we really appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you guys having me. Best of luck with the new launch, man. I know it's going to be awesome. I enjoyed talking to you, so I know I'm going to enjoy listening to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And hopefully we can get out there and maybe we can slay some urban does with you before too long.
Hey, man, I've got plenty of targets, so please do.
Awesome, brother. Hey, have a great week.
Take care.
All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Billy Phillips today. Again, definitely go and check out all those social media platforms that he had mentioned. We'll include those in the show notes as well. As always, please give us a rating if you enjoyed the conversation. It's only going to help our channel grow. And until next time, enjoy the pursuit.